What up, guys? It's your boy Gary Official, aka Stern Gary, or THL guys from the Hidden Layer, and today we are going to discuss Watch Dogs Legion. Before we get started, I need to say thank you to Ubisoft London and Ubisoft Toronto, Saga, and the Nerd Council for making sure and gifting me a copy to play early. So thank you very much for that. Hashtag gifted, all that stuff. If you didn't know what Watch Dogs Legions is about, without any spoilers, it's essentially set in near future London. Certain things happen and you become part of this hacker group that is trying to, I guess, cause an uprising of some sort, or like fight this current establishment, and you traverse through the city of trying to create a movement that will throw over this establishment. All right, let's get into the positives. Things we liked about the game. First of all, graphically, the game looked fantastic. We really enjoyed the graphics, and even on an old Xbox One, it ran fantastic. It was really fun to traverse through London and, go through roads that you know so well. Like, you could really at times just travel through London without even having to get the map up, which was really nice to do and like quite refreshing. Something I've never really experienced in the game. Definitely something you haven't really seen any other franchise. And touching on the point of being able to traverse through the city, some parts of London were really accurate. I think the parts that you get to see as a tourist quite often were in particular quite accurate, and those were like the areas that you could really traverse through the city without really having to have any sort of sat nav slash in-game map to guide you through the city. The fact that you can practically play with anyone in the game is absolutely insane. Like, we started like recruiting like random people to our crew. We had like a millionaire who was worth like 250 million, and she was just like earning more money, for instance. We had a granny who actually used to be a terrorist, which is so crazy to think. And yeah, it's just pretty sick to see how you could play anyone, right? You can practically recruit any of these like AI generated characters, NPCs in the game, and add them to your DedSec crew. Another thing really enjoyed about the game was that there was like no real one way to complete in missions. Like after our stream, we would tune into other people's streams and see what they were doing, and they were kind of doing the same missions we had just done, and they were doing it so differently. You could go in with your spider bot and just do everything with your spider bot. You could walk in, shoot everyone. You could use a combination of both. You could hire someone specifically for that type of mission and just walk in, right? Say you want to go into a hospital, you could hire someone that's a paramedic and just walk in without getting detected. Just seeing how different everyone was doing the same missions was really refreshing, because in a lot of times when you play like these story mode games, they are quite linear and you always have to do things in a certain way, and this was just like different to those games because you could just do it however you wanted to do it. The option of like permadeath I thought was a really cool thing to see. When we were streaming, we had a lot of people in the chat talking about permadeath, and it was definitely something I'm looking to explore when I have a second run through the game. Being kind of punished probably for not playing the right way or like not being careful is a really cool concept, and I think something that a lot more games should consider, especially games where you do get to recruit multiple characters and games where you have multiple characters, right? So it isn't necessarily like the end of it all, but it's kind of just like, this character is gone and you're gonna have to either find someone to replace them or do the mission with someone else. Now let's get into the negatives. The first thing I noticed with Watch Dogs was that quite quickly the game became quite repetitive in nature. The tasks were varying, but they were the same in nature. Like, you were doing the same type of stuff over and over again. You just kind of do them a bit differently, and you might be able to approach them differently, but the aim of the mission was the same thing, really. And that became quite like repetitive and effort to do, right? Like, you didn't really have much variation in what you had to do. The aim was always kind of the same thing, and I feel like they kind of missed the mark with making the story a bit more gripping and interesting to follow with different type of scenarios. The next thing was touching on how you could play these levels. The spider bot was just too strong. You could practically do anything. I've completed numerous missions in the game without even entering the place I needed to enter. You can pretty much maneuver through majority of buildings with your spider bot. The range is more than enough on it, and you can interact with pretty much anything that's a physical interaction. So unless you needed to go indoors to pick something up physically, you could do everything with your spider bot. And once you get double jump on it, it becomes even crazier just what you're able to do. It got to a point where I was getting a cargo drone and jumping the spider bot on there and just flying the spider bot up to the roof whenever I needed to access something really high up. And it's just crazy how powerful the spider bot is. My personal opinion, I think it should be a bit weaker, or there should be a bit more of a cooldown or some sort of range limit on it that makes it a bit better. Or maybe not the physical interaction, because that seemed to kind of be a cop-out. The next thing, I guess, kind of touching on that, is the tech skills and the physical abilities of characters didn't really differ that much. Obviously, some being better hackers, some being better at certain things faster and so on. It almost seemed not plausible that like a 78-year-old grandma was able to hack everything as efficiently as she was able to, and had the athleticism of like an Olympic gymnast. It just made no sense whatsoever, and I feel like they should have really worked on making, fleshing out characters a lot more. So that was a bit, it left you like wanting more depth from those characters, which really also addresses the next point I was going to make, which is that a lot of the people that you do recruit to DedSec just feel like tools. They feel like a tools, a means to completing your mission, and that's about it. They really lack like personality and character, and I feel like that is something that they should have really worked on, because you don't really have like a group feeling. It is more of a, this character does this job, this character does that job, and that was really it, I guess. And kind of like hitting something on that, I think a lot more of the London content creators noticed was that the accents just didn't seem right. The choice of words just didn't seem right. It seemed like 8% of black people I encountered in the map on the game had a Jamaican accent. It just made no sense.
You're in my spears, man.
A lot of the, let's quote unquote, urban accents were really exaggerated. It was almost just like, how many slang words can I fit in one sentence?
Right, so some gangster dickheads are fucking with good people down at ends, saying they'll like keep them safe or something if they pay.
And it just kind of depicted London in an odd way. I think they really missed the mark with getting that balance correct. I feel like certain demographics were not even represented in any shape or form. The African community, like a lot more Asian community, and the Latino community that also exists within London just seem to be kind of left behind and not really addressed or represented as well as, or as much as they are present in current day London. And that leads me to my final verdict and how we got to that. I feel like Watch Dogs is a game that has a lot of detail and lacks a lot of detail. I think some parts of London have just been depicted fantastically, and other parts have just been kind of lackluster. The story had so much potential, but really lacked of fleshing out and diversity in the way it was written, and lacked that gripping factor that you really look for in a story mode game. I guess the most off-thrown moment was the, and spoiler alert, organ transfer situation that you kind of ran into. But other than that, the game felt quite linear and very forgettable. It's a game that I enjoyed in a moment, a game that I had a lot of fun with initially, but the novelty wore off and you started noticing the lack of detail as well as the detail. And that's why overall we're giving this game a 6.5 out of 10. Would I recommend this game to play? Yes, I think it's worth playing if you enjoy Watch Dogs. I think it's worth playing. It's a great, fantastic display of good graphics. Do I think you will remember this game after a year? Probably not, because it just does lack that extra bit of detail, that extra bit of thinking, and that extra bit of expansion on the story. Something that you could have really honed in on was to just making it a bit different. And with that, we are done with our review. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to drop a like below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on post notifications. and I hope to see you next time. See ya.